Welcome to the show. This is Jason Hartman, your host, and every 10th episode we do something kind of special, kind of different. What we do is we go off topic. So regardless of which show it is on the Hartman Media Network, whether it be one of the financial shows, economics, real estate investing, travel, longevity, all of the other topics that we have, every 10th episode we go off topic and we explore something of general interest, something of general life success value. And so many of our listeners around the world in 164 countries have absolutely loved our 10th episode shows. So that's what we're going to do today. And let's go ahead and get to our guest with a special 10th episode show. And of course, on the next episode, we'll be back to our regular programming. Here we go.
This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
5 out of 5 for the Jason Hartman podcast. Thanks to his teachings, I have no worries about my future. My future is bright, and that for my family. I recommend the Jason Hartman team to anybody who is interested in financial freedom by way of real estate investing. 5 out of 5.
Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to episode 1940. Thank you for joining me today. Our guest will be Rabbi Daniel Lapin, and he is here to share some great stuff from a couple of his books. He has several. He talks about thou shalt prosper, the 10 commandments for making money, not to be confused with my 10 commandments of being an empowered investor or 10 commandments of successful investing, and the business secrets from the Bible. This is a 10th episode show, so we discuss something of general non-financial interest usually, and this show, it's sort of a hybrid. So we're going to have Rabbi Lapin here with us in a few minutes for our 10th episode show today. All right, so before we get to him, money, the changing value of money. I thought this article was very interesting. It says the changing value of money requires mental adjustments. Boy, that is certainly true. And what does this mean? This refers to inflation, and how a dollar or a pound or a yen or a euro or a Brazilian real or a peso ain't what it used to be, right? Because of inflation debasing the value of our currency around the world. And this is interesting. And, I think this really applies especially to older people, because older people have memories and they've been around longer and they just know more than we do, right? And they remember when things were so much less expensive and when the value of that currency unit was so much higher than it is today. That's why you hear them say things like, hey kid, back in my day, you could buy a house for only $25,000. Or back in my day, it only cost 5 cents to send a letter or a postcard. And you look at the price of a stamp nowadays, not that so many of us use stamps anymore, but hey, the post office is still a thing. It's still a thing, definitely. And, this perspective changes, right? And so it's the difference between real and nominal. We all know this. I know this is not big news to anybody, but it's just interesting that we see it actually in the news, in the mainstream media, that we have to make mental adjustments because our currency is being so debased in pretty much every country on earth. This is true. And this is the Keynesian ethic of pumping more money into the system, creating more currency units, lessens its scarcity and lessens its utility. And as you know, I've taught you many times over the years that the two primary value drivers for anything in the world are scarcity and utility. If something is going to be valuable, it has to be scarce and it has to have some usefulness. It can't just be scarce. It has to have some utility. It has to have both of these components for it to be valuable, right? And if you want to increase the value of something, then limit the supply of it. We're doing the opposite with currency units, right? All these governments and all these central banks are creating more and more currency units, so they're making them less scarce, so they're going to be less valuable. And that in turn limits their utility. One precipitates the other, because when you have all of these less scarce units and they're out chasing limited supplies of goods and services, especially when the supply chain is constrained or people don't want to work and people don't want to provide services, and we are looking into the future at a ever increasing shortage of labor. Now, maybe some of this labor shortage problem will be cured through automation. And we've talked about that a lot on the shows. And of course, we just had this big breakthrough in artificial intelligence technology, a lot more on that topic coming up at Empowered Investor Live, our conference in Scottsdale. We really want to make sure you join us for that. So be sure to get your tickets. We're going to make some big predictions about artificial intelligence and how it's going to change the world and the economy at Empowered Investor Live. I'm really, really excited about that, and I hope you have your tickets for that already. If you don't, go get them. Okay, so this article, it says, in the 1987 film Wall Street, we all saw that film, of course, Charlie Sheen winning. Remember what happened to Charlie Sheen after his meltdown? It's so funny. Admonishes his father, and that actually was played by his father in the movie, if you remember, not keeping up with the changing value of a salary that once sounded high. $50,000 does not get you to first base in the Big Apple in New York City, right, Dad, he says, anymore. And, you know, this is just the relativity issue. We all know this. The price of housing, the price of everything just changes so much that we've got to mentally adjust to it. But guess what's happening? The beauty of this whole thing is, well, the negative of it is it's hurting most people, right? Sadly, it is destroying the middle class. It's decimating the poor. The difference is, though, the poor get help from their respective governments most of the time. The middle class does not get any help. So the middle class is just being decimated. And it's really, really ravishing to the middle class what inflation does to them. But for you, because you are in the know, you know that your debt is being debased by inflation, and you're attaching that debt to assets that are indexed to inflation, income property. So it's the best of both worlds. It's what I call the double inflation arbitrage, And that is an absolutely beautiful thing that you are taking advantage of. So that's really good. But for most people, it's not good at all, this kind of inflation and the changing value of money. Okay, now this is an interesting article I just want to share before we get to the rabbi. Case-Shiller National House Price Index, quote, continued to decline, unquote, to 9.2% year over year increase in October. You really got to peel the layers of the onion here, don't you, folks? Yes, you do. You really, it's amazing how these news stories in general and these headlines especially are so misinterpreted by so many people. FHFA, now they do a home price survey, of course. The Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA, not to be confused with FHA, quote, house prices were flat nationwide in October, experiencing a 0% change from the previous month. Okay, fine. S&P, now everybody thinks they're falling off a cliff and declining, but of course, they don't know how to understand the market. But you do, fortunately. Okay, S&P Case-Shiller U.S. National Home Price, NSA Index. Now, we've talked a lot about Case-Shiller and how really flawed their index is, because the most widely cited index is the composite index of 20 markets. They have another composite index of just 10 markets. Very, very misleading to look at this, because those are weighted so heavily toward cyclical markets, not linear or hybrid markets. Again, I won't go down that rabbit hole because we've discussed it ad nauseum on prior episodes. But this index, covering all 9 U.S. Census divisions, reported a 9.2% annual gain in October, down from 10.7% annual gain in the previous month. The 10-city composite, okay, here it is, annual increase came in at 8%, down from 9.6% in the previous month. And the 20-city composite, this is the most widely cited one, posted 8.6% year-over-year gain, down from 10.4% in the previous month. What does that all mean, folks? What does it mean? What it means is that it's interesting. Go back and look at the headline. If you're watching on video, it's on the screen. This headline's right here for you. Quote, continued to decline, unquote. Most people read that thinking the market declined. No, it did not. What it says is that the pace of increase declined, not prices. Not at all, in fact. Prices were up, okay? Reported a 9.2% annual gain in October. That's for the national index. An 8% gain for the 10-city composite index, and an 8.6% gain year over year for the 20-city composite index. So it's just very, very interesting to really understand these headlines and what they mean. Now, of course, you're not going to see this in any Case-Shiller report ever. Well, hopefully they'll get a better index. But until then, we've got to discuss it here on the show, because what they don't do is they don't divide the 3 major types of markets: linear markets, cyclical markets, and hybrid markets. And the cyclical markets are suffering badly, just as I predicted they would. It's absolutely playing out exactly like I said it would. Don't believe me? You don't have to. All my old shows are right here for you to listen to. They're all recorded. It's all on tape. So just well, it's not really on tape. It's in a bunch of ones and zeros of binary code stored in the cloud. But you can listen to it either way, right? And so go back and listen to those old episodes, and you'll see that I said all of this was going to happen. It's playing out just like I said, that the cyclical markets increase too much, they would suffer the most. And here we are, just like I said it would be. So it's just interesting. You really got to understand what's going on by slicing and dicing. And if you want to understand that better, join us for Empowered Investor Live in Scottsdale. We've got a bunch of great speakers on the screen. You see, of course, yours truly, plus Ken McElroy, Rich Dad author and investor, Sharon Lechter, financial literacy expert, Rudyard Lynch, who has the YouTube channel What If Alt History, historical patterns, future event predictions, and a lot of geopolitical economic trends. Tom Wheelwright, Rich Dad tax expert. He's great, which, by the way, I have another big announcement. If you want something for free, here is a great free thing. Check your email, because we will send out 2 email blasts on this before it happens. Okay, if you're on our email list, you're going to get this. And join us for a Zoom meeting that is open to everybody with Tom Wheelwright on Tuesday, January 3rd. Okay, so that's the first Tuesday of the new year. We're going to have Tom Wheelwright on Zoom, and we're going to have a nice Zoom meeting. Now, this is the traditional Zoom meeting for our Empowered Investor Pro members. And we're keeping it private for the beginning of that meeting. And then we're inviting everybody in who wants to attend just to see Tom Wheelwright and have him share some great tax planning ideas for you for the new year. Remember, the single largest expense in any of our lives is tax. Taxation is our biggest expense. We've got to be prudent at knowing how to reduce our tax liability or eliminate it completely. And Tom can help us do that. We got some great tips for the new year. This guy is highly sought after. He charges a fortune. If you want him to be your CPA, he hardly takes any clients at all. And when he does, he charges an absolute fortune. But you get him for free. join us on Zoom on Tuesday evening, and that'll be at 8:30 Eastern Time, Tuesday evening. Come join Tom Wheelwright. This is open to everybody for free, and we'd love to have you join us. So look in your email for the details on how you can register for that. It's totally free, or reach out to us through jasonhartman.com. If you're already working with one of our investment counselors, they can provide the information for you, and join us on Tuesday for that. But Tom, you can meet him in person because he'll also, of course, be speaking in person at Empowered Investor Live. Then, of course, we have George Gammon talking about macroeconomics and investing. And then Joe Brown with Heresy Financial, also great speaker. He's got a fantastic YouTube channel. He's going to join us as well as a whole bunch of other great speakers at Empowered Investor Live, our local market specialists, property managers, lenders, 1031 tax deferred exchange experts. This is going to be a great opportunity. Plus, it's a lot of fun. And don't forget, one of the most important reasons to get your tickets for Empowered Investor Live is that we are having an air guitar contest. Yes, air guitar. Are you good at air guitar? I love playing air guitar. We're going to have a contest. I will not be entering the contest. I'll just be fooling around playing air guitar. But if you think you're a good air guitarist, be sure to come, because we will have some good prizes for the top 3 air guitarists at Empowered Investor Live. We'll have dancing, we'll have fun, we have cocktail reception, just a great time. So go get your tickets for Empowered Investor Live. This only happens once a year. Scottsdale, Arizona, great way if you live in an inclement weather area to get away from the bad weather and join us in Scottsdale. Go to empoweredinvestor.com/live. That's empoweredinvestor.com/live and get your tickets today. And without further ado, let's get to our guest, Rabbi Daniel Lapin. Here he is. It is my pleasure to welcome Rabbi Daniel Lapin to the show. He is the author of many books, including Thou Shalt Prosper, The 10 Commandments for Making Money, and Business Secrets of the Bible. Rabbi, welcome. How are you?
Thank you very much. I really been looking forward to this opportunity because I admire what you do. I really do. You help people into meaningful investment, and I'd love to know how many people you have brought to the threshold of affluence, but I'm sure it's a very large number.
Well, several thousand. So I can say
that's
much.
A large number.
It's great to have you on, Rabbi. And you know, one of the things we were talking about before starting today, just kind of off-air discussion, is this conflict that people have with money, right? Is money good? Is it bad? Is it evil? Can a rich person get into heaven? We've heard it all, right? Help us reconcile that for a moment, if you would.
It's hugely important, obviously, because the failure to associate money with dignity and morality makes it very, very difficult to succeed. And you can see the evidence of this literally from the girl who babysits for you from down the road. And when you ask her at the end of the evening how much you owe her, and her eyes go down to the floor and her foot starts tracing awkward patterns on the carpet, and she just can't say, you owe me $40, because she feels that she's not making it, but taking it. And she's getting that not necessarily from religion, although unfortunately there is a great deal of it in religion. And I speak in, maybe more than 20 churches a year around the world. And very often, I got to tell you, I drive up to the church and I can tell within the first 30 seconds whether this is a church that believes that money is bad. There's cracks in the parking lot. The building needs some paint. A couple of light bulbs are out. The pastor's wife looks stressed from not being able to pay bills. And I know right away that I got my work cut out for me. I'm going to have to really change an entire mindset of an entire congregation there. But this obviously has a lot to do with why Jews are disproportionately good with money. We do not see money as evidence of malfeasance. We don't see possession of money as evidence that you have hurt other people. And it's crucial to get that, because if you are going to be able to function in business with confidence and conviction, and with effectiveness, then you've got to be proud of what you do. And that means you've got to understand that making money is part of God's plan for human economic interaction. It's a good and positive thing. And it's only a culture that is becoming increasingly tending towards socialism that they've succeeded in making an entire generation of young people feel awkward about making money, that somehow there's something wrong with it.
Why is money moral? And why do some think it's immoral?
Right. Well, the first question first, money is moral in the sense that, shall we say, to be a bit controversial, a .357 Magnum revolver is moral. The fact is, an object is neither moral nor immoral. Objects are completely neutral. Only human beings have the capacity to act morally or immorally. Even the wolf that gobbles up the sheep that had managed to steal from the local rancher, that wolf's not immoral. We don't hold a symposium to discuss the declining morality of neighborhood wolves. We tell the rancher, put up a better fence. Wolves do what they do. What is done with money and how one uses money determines the morality of the owner of that money. But money itself is neither good nor evil. Where the love of money...
then why is the pursuit of it, or the love of it, if you will, the pursuit, the love, why do people believe it's immoral, and why is it moral or virtuous?
So first of all, why is it virtuous? And then I'll explain why there is so much confusion and deep disillusionment about money. The reason it's moral is because provided you're not using that .357 Magnum revolver to get hold of it by pointing it at somebody's head and saying your money or your life, but if you're not doing that, there is only one other way to get hold of money. If you're not taking it away forcibly from other people, either by an act of government taxation or by holding up the local convenience store, if you're not doing either of those things and you're not defrauding your fellow citizens, then the only remaining way of getting money is by giving value to your fellow citizens that's greater than the money you're asking for. That's the only way it happens. And so if you've got $1 bill in your pocket and you didn't hold up a store or mug a little old lady or defraud somebody or get the government to take it from me and give it to you, if you didn't do any of those things, the only way you got that $1 bill is by pleasing another human being. It could have been a customer, it could have been a client, it could be a relative, but somebody gave it to you voluntarily. And people lose sight of this a great deal. If I can give you a quick example of how this works, any financial transaction between consenting adults produces wealth, and that's where money comes from. A lot of people don't get this, but it's really important, and the arithmetic is really quite straightforward. We can watch somebody going into a store and he wants to buy a pair of shoes. And what's nice is straight away there is a friendly interaction between vendor and potential customer. And eventually the customer pays $20 and walks out with a pair of sneakers that have lights that flash in the heel. So now we've got a socialist professor from some American university business school, tragically, and he chases after the customer because he's quite convinced that the evil capitalist, the store owner, cheated this poor customer. So he runs up to the customer and says, "How much did you give him for those shoes?" Customer, "I gave him $20. The professor says, "Look, I feel sorry for you, so I'm going to give you back $20. You give me the shoes, I'll take them back to the store." The guy says, "You're out of your mind. I've been looking for these for 2 weeks. I found a store that has them in my size. You're mad." The professor says, "Well, would you take $25? Guy says, "Absolutely not. How about $30? At this point, the customer thinks to himself, "I'm not an idiot. I mean, $10 profit on the pair of shoes in 5 minutes, it may make sense." So he says to the guy, $35, you got yourself a deal. At that moment, the professor has established what the actual value of the shoes are on the financial statement of the customer. We've just established that beyond any shadow of a doubt. This isn't necessarily GAAP accounting. This is not generally accepting accounting principles because the SEC established a different system of accounting in order to sort of create a level field of reporting in companies. But basically, in terms of real value, this man now should have on his financial statement, I gave up $20 and I have an asset that I value at $35. We've just proved that because he won't sell it for less than $35. And now the professor nonplus goes to the
goods or services are worth more to the buyer than they are to the seller. Obviously,
they're certainly worth more to the buyer than he paid. Otherwise, he wouldn't have engaged in that transaction. And now we go to the seller and we say, hey, a guy walked out of here with a nice pair of shoes and all he gave you is $20. Would you like it back? And the guy says, you're crazy. The pair of shoes, because of the wholesale shoe margin, the pair of shoes on my books is a $10 asset. That's what I paid the wholesaler for them. I've now replaced a $10 asset with $20 cash in my cash register. I'm as happy as could be. And so what we discover is that through this transaction, vendor has converted $10 to $20, so he's up 10. Customers converted 20 to 35, he's up 15. There's been a net increase in money supply of $25 through this transaction created, and therein lies one of the big secrets. And here I'm not speaking as a rabbi, I'm speaking as somebody with a deep interest in economics. Money is a spiritual commodity, not a physical commodity. And by that, I just mean it's not measurable in a lab. Whether money is discs of metal in my pocket or strips of colored paper in my wallet, or maybe it's the orientation of iron oxide molecules on the back of my credit card, or maybe it's a check I write to you, or maybe I shake hands with you and I say, I'll give you $10 on Friday. All of those things are money. Money is a spiritual commodity. Now, one of the things about spiritual commodities is that they can be created out of thin air, whereas physical commodities cannot. And so for a violin to be created in Cremona, Italy by a descendant of Stradivarius, it takes certain types of wood and certain types of glue. But to compose a tune, you know, if you have talent, you sit in your room for a couple of hours and you come out at the end there with a tune pulled out of nowhere, and value is being created. So as long as people assume that money is a physical object, then the fact that I have some means I must have taken it away from other people, because physical objects can only occupy one place in the space-time continuum. Spiritual objects, if I teach you a tune, we now both have the tune. But if you take my Stradivarius violin, I no longer have it, and now you've got it. That's the difference between physical and spiritual. The thing about money is that we can engage in a transaction, and we both actually come out richer than we were before. It's a miracle. It's a wonderful thing. But if you don't understand that, then making money is indistinguishable from taking money.
You know, you're very much reminding me of a great book I read many years ago called Power Shift by Alvin Toffler. He talked about the three major forms of power from the beginning of time: the ability to inflict violence, the ability to control capital, and the information age, the ability to control information. And the information being that highest grade form of power, which in a way is like your comparison of money to being a spiritual thing, because both people can have the information at the same time. Yeah. It's not limited in supply. Millions of people can have the information at the same time, and it doesn't diminish the value, right? Everybody can have it and use it. And that's similar to the way you talk about money. That's a very, very interesting way that you talk about that.
In other words, it's impossible for me to make money without making the world a better place for you too.
Right. So here's the question then. And maybe you disagree with the statement I'm about to make, but I interviewed the author of The Winner Take All Society on my show before. You know, I kind of agree with the idea of that. I mean, we have such concentrations of wealth nowadays, and, you know, because certain types of businesses are very scalable. I'm talking about tech companies, of course, and others aren't. And people in positions of power that can use the government and the laws and rent seeking and lobbyists, you what do you say to all that? Is it really working, or are there some breakdowns in the system?
No, there's no question about it that the free market in the United States of America is no longer a free market. I'll tell you something shocking, which is kind of really a different discussion, Jason, but the actual marketplace in China is freer than the marketplace in the United States. There is a lot of repression in China, socially and politically. But in terms of thumbs on the scale, the American market, between regulation and rent-seeking and politics and many other aspects of it, the market is no longer a free market. The fact that an immigrant to the country cannot become a hairstylist without getting licensing and paying fees, even though there's somebody down the road who's perfectly happy to let this person style their hair, that is a huge interference in the market. So there are very damaging influences, no question about it. But inequality in and of itself is not actually a sign of a problem. It only is if you found the belief that equality is a value. But the truth is, as almost every political philosopher has identified, it's something self-evident, which is you can choose. You can choose freedom or equality, but you're not going to have both. If you want equality, you're going to have to impose it by force. And if you want freedom, there will be inequality.
Yeah, and we've all seen how that works out in history. It's not pretty at all in terms of imposing equality, right? So we talked about the earning of money, and that's great. I love what you said about it. What about the spending of money and the use of money? Once we've earned it, and we all agree that we've earned it fair and square, we've created value in the marketplace. Others felt that what they got in terms of goods or services from us was more valuable than the money they gave us for those goods or services. So everybody won in that transaction, as you illustrated before. What about spending it? What should we do with it? Are there right and wrongs here?
None whatsoever. Do whatever you wish with it because it belongs.
So be a gluttonous, hedonistic, sloth.
I don't know. Speak to your pastor about that. I'm here to help you make more money.
Okay.
And the critical thing the real answer to your very good question is realize that you have no right whatsoever to anybody else's money, and nobody has any right to yours. Now, I have an obligation to give charity, but that's my own personal choice. And when I choose to give charity, on whom I choose to bestow that charity is my decision because it's my money.
Okay. So what about taxation?
It's an interesting thing that thousands of years before the Laffer curve established the maximum, most effective tax rate at between 17 and 20%, we have a story at the end of Genesis.
I met Arthur Laffer when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
I haven't had him on the show, though, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you should. He's an older guy today, but still very. I think in August we had a chance for a chat. But anyway, the point is that it's been known for a very long time. Towards the end of the book of Genesis, there's a famine in Egypt, and Joseph wants to try and fix things up. And what he does is he lowers the tax rate to 20%. That's what it says. It's literally, that's what it says.
Supply side economics. Trickle
and
down
guess
economics.
what? The land starts producing in abundance.
Yeah.
And that's exactly right. The current tax rate that most Americans pay is close to 50%. You say, what? How do you get to that? Oh, very easily. Yeah. By the time you've got federal and state and sales, and then the costs of regulatory things, right, which is just another form of taxation. Yeah. Most people are working for one level or another of government, federal, state, county, or municipal, until about July or August of every year. So we're paying a very, very high tax rate, and the American economy is showing the results of that.
Is there a fair tax rate, though?
The word fair has absolutely no meaning to it. It's, for instance, you'll hear a phrase very often, Jason, usually from politicians, by the way, never from me. And that is the rich must pay their fair share. Mm-hmm. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah, right.
Who are the rich? Well, we'll tell you who the rich are. Today it's them, but tomorrow it's going to be you.
Yeah, right.
And what's fair? whatever we decide. What's fair? Fair's not a number. And it's really important. So there isn't such a thing as a fair tax rate, but there is such a thing as a smart tax rate, which is the tax rate at which people will still, human nature will still engage in hard work and productivity without feeling that it's not worth it. And that rate is somewhere around about 20%, which, Arthur Lapin.
I was just going to say that. Steve Forbes advocated the 15%. He's been on the show talking about the flat tax. If it's 20%, that'd be fine, but it's got to be flat across the board and equal for everybody. And, if God can live on 10%, the government can live on 20%.
No, progressive tax rates are thoroughly evil. The idea that welfare recipients don't pay tax is a terrible mistake. But look, it's these are policy errors. And the fact is, and here I quote the sage, Jason, who says that, how do you put it? Something like politics isn't going to change, so why don't you focus on your finances?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And I agree with that entirely. We can talk about political philosophy all day, but the bottom line is that yes, there's a dreadful inflationary environment. Inflationary result is the result of evil and stupid government policies. But none of that is relevant. What's relevant is you have to increase your revenue. You've got to make more money. And all that really matters is figuring out how to do it and then executing on that plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice. Anything else you'd like to say about money? Because I do want to just touch on a tangential issue that I saw a great article on your website I wanted to ask you about before.
When you ask me, is there anything else I'd like to speak about on money? I'm afraid the only answer I can give you is yes, about 39 hours worth, approximately.
Okay. Good point. Fair enough. So just kind of switching topics for a moment here.
Yeah, sure.
We have had, as of about 50 years ago, we had another big wave of feminism sweep the country. And
yes, correct.
It created massive changes in terms of the sexual revolution, fatherless homes, a lot of very unhappy people, I would argue, both men and women. Talk to us a little bit about this issue and the declining birth rate and, the broken family. I'm sure this could be another 39 hours easily, but just touch on that for us if you would, because it has wide-ranging economic impact. And let me maybe just give you a little fodder for that, because we're really talking about the money side of things mostly. If it's the 50s and you're in government and you want to think, gosh, the economy has been booming for quite a while. Now we're headed for the business cycle, a recession. If you're in the corporatocracy and you're supplying products to consumers and you're thinking, gosh, we've had this boom time post-World War II and now it's changing. We got to increase our market share. What about getting this other half of the human population, putting them to work? Let's get them paying taxes. Let's get them growing the GDP. Let's get them consuming products. If people are married, they're only going to need one sofa and one coffee maker and one house. If they're single or divorced, they're going to need two of everything. So we can literally double our market share if we're, any consumer company at all. Talk to us about that for a moment, if you would.
Yeah, sure. Look, in the late 19th century and into the 20th century, first half of the 20th century, there were three thinkers who introduced between them a totally new theology to the Western world. The first one was Darwin, the second one was Freud, and the third one was Marx. And the reason these three are so important is because in the final analysis, what provides me with some sense of direction in my life is the idea that I have something of meaning behind me. I know who my parents were. I know who my grandparents were. I know who the founders of my country were. I'm not an orphan in history. I do have a past. And I also have a future. I live in a future of optimism. I live in a future where I personally believe in some kind of glorious, ultimate divine redemption of humanity. How it's going to play out, I don't have the faintest idea, but I'm basically optimistic about the future. And then in terms of the present, I'm not filled with gloom and doom as far as the present is concerned. There's all kinds of wonderful and exciting things to build and to grow. And along came Charles Darwin and said, forget about it. You really are nothing more than $9 worth of common chemicals. You are essentially the result of a lengthy, unaided process of materialistic evolution that converted primitive protoplasm into plumbers and proctologists. I mean, that's all you are. And then Marx came along and said, hey, the only way there's going to be a glorious future is if we build a proletarian utopia and have a grand revolution. Okay, fine. And then Freud came along and you know, not to oversimplify it, but basically, hey, you know, you only go around, you only live once, so you may as well wallow in sensation and excitement, essentially.
Well, and John Maynard Keynes had that same philosophy as Freud, by the way.
No, and there's a reason for it. John Maynard Keynes never had any children. And I really think that when I'm in charge, one of the rules I'll make is that you may not make government policy if you're a person without a stake in the future, namely in the form of children. And that's why John Maynard Keynes's economics worked great for one generation only, because he never thought in terms of a longer term. So yeah, that's exactly right.
His whole statement was, in the end, we're all dead, right? So
exactly. Yeah. And you can't build a society and a civilization on that policy. It's not true, and it doesn't work. So the basic thing that doesn't change, and again, something that Marx and Darwin and Freud all came up with and all suggested, is the infinite malleability of human nature, that we are going to change human nature. We're going to change how people feel. So yes, it's true that once upon a time, men wanted sexual exclusivity over their women, but there's no reason for that, because we can be modern and we can raise ourselves above that primitiveness. That was only because men wanted to know about paternity, but now we don't have to. It's not true. All right? You cannot change it. The fact is, the overwhelming majority of men are not willing to share their women. They're just not.
Just think of this for a moment, everybody listening. How arrogant is like the last two generations, right? The last two generations, this massive amount of intellectual arrogance to think that in 5 decades, they can rewrite the way humans have been for thousands of years. I mean, and all you need to do to know that human nature is the same as it was thousands of years ago is just read scripture. Nothing has changed. We are the same basic types of people. And by the way, there's my dog in the picture. Isn't she cute?
Oh, look at him.
Yeah.
Yes, I see him. That's lovely. I love dogs. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
There she is. Yeah. Anyway,
so
go ahead. There was quite.
So one of the things that doesn't change is that women at a certain stage in their lives will realize that they want children and a family more than they want a career. The overwhelming majority of women. Are there exceptions? Obviously there are. You know, there are women with moustaches. Of course there are exceptions, but overwhelmingly a man stays at it. And by the way, we know the stats, even female physicians work an average of 3.5 days a week. The average male physician works 5.5 days a week, because to men, work is fundamental to our identity. It's not going to change, never will change, never has changed.
Yep.
We will work till we drop. For women, there are other things more important, as well they should be. And so one of the issues, and this helps us understand why otherwise intelligent people like Angela Merkel, who ran Germany for many years, and many others like that, who, by the way, also a childless lady, it's really interesting, because one of the things they thought they could change was this basic idea that a man and a woman who have children are at some level going to need to count on those children to support them. Lapin, what are you talking about? Do you think we're still living in a primitive agrarian regime where people need children to send out to the field? No, you moron.
We have the government to support us. Why would we need kids, right?
And how does all that work? Well, it works with taxpayers, and it works with your retirement policy being vested in the stock market. And the stock market is companies that sell products to people. And so this is why it is that if a country's population stats do not look like a pyramid, where each generation beneath has to have more people than the one above it, you do not have a viable economy. It's Econ 101. It's really very basic. Angela Merkel in Germany saw that the birth rate in Germany, as well as in Italy and Scandinavia and Greece and Holland and France
and Japan and Russia.
Yeah, they saw, well, actually, Russia's different. Putin, and with his revival of the Eastern Church, has actually done a lot for the Russian birth rate. But in all those Western countries, the birth rate had dropped way below replacement level. 2.1 children per woman is replacement level.
In Western Europe, it's like 1.1. It's tragic.
That is absolutely correct.
What I have said on this show for years, Rabbi, if you want to have a country, you have to have children. You cannot have a country without children. Period. End of discussion.
Have you ever visited Israel, Jason?
Israel, yes.
One of the things that strikes you about Israel is the number of kids. It's the Western country with more fertility than any other industrialized country. And fertility and prosperity go hand in hand. And so Angela Merkel and others thought,
but then the lefties will say, well, kids are bad for the environment,
Yeah, right. Okay, fine. Why don't we confine our conversation to things that at least have a modicum of basic intelligence to them?
I love it. You got it. Go ahead, Rabbi.
So they thought that since there's about 2 million missing young German men and women, why not replace them with 2 million males from Middle East and North Africa countries? Who could see anything going wrong with that?
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong?
Right. Yeah. So to answer your question, sort of long answer to good simple question. Yeah, prosperity is linked to fertility. There's no question about it. Fertility is tied to optimism, and that is evidently linked to faith, because the statistics seem to show communities of faith are more fertile than communities of atheism or secularism.
The last woman I dated that I liked, in a sort of serious way, she didn't want to have children. And I said to her one day, I said, it's like the stock market. Your view of the future is that you're shorting the future because you don't believe in the future, right?
That's right.
Because, if to have kids is a long bet, you're going long on the future, right? You're betting that the future is going to be at least as good as today, if not better, because that's how you would view your money. You'd play it long and you'd want to have gains on that money over time. But if you're shorting the future, you believe that it's going to go down in value. And
very good.
That's the difference.
Well, by the way, I'm fascinated, Jason. What was her reason? Why didn't she want children?
I don't know. Emotional detachment. Not sure.
Okay. Because it's
selfishness. I don't know.
How old was she at the time?
36.
Okay, that is unusual for a 36-year-old
which amazed
woman.
me, because mostly any woman in 30s is going to be really wanting to have children, right? That's called the biological imperative. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So no question about
situation.
it. So that is a problem, and again, I speak about how important it is to have a family in the process. If you're interested in making money, you may not realize that you need a wife and children if you're a guy, but you really do, because you will be more effective in finance if you also are effective in family at the same time.
Well, you'll also have more of a reason for doing it, a raison d'etre, right?
Well, that's a very much part of it, yes.
Yeah. For most people, that's definitely needed. Well, Rabbi, I could talk to you for hours more. I love it. Would love to have you back on the show, but I've kept you long enough, so I apologize for that. Please give out your website. Of course, your books are available in all the usual places with fantastic reviews, by the way.
Thank you.
And a lot of reviews. So good for you. But tell us where people can find you.
Rabbi Daniel Lapin.com is probably the easiest way to find me. Lapin is my last name, so it's rabbidaniellapin.com, and there I am.
Rabbi, thank you so much for joining us.
You are most welcome. It's a pleasure anytime at all.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.